Responding to drugs, I mean, they weren't getting a viable rhythm back, but they finally did. And when they transported me to the hospital, they, were intubating me and just, putting me on a ventilator. I was not conscious. I did not regain consciousness. And I started having a type of posturing called decerebrate posturing, which is something that happens when the brain has suffered a tremendous insult. And I had at that point. I was without oxygen for a long period of time. And generally, it means, that the person is just not going to do well, that they've suffered some irreversible brain damage. And my husband saw this from outside of the ER bay where he was watching. And the doctors came out and they said, listen, we don't think Debbie's going to make it. And, it's hard for us to say. But there is one thing we could try. We have no idea if it's going to work. It's new. It's a relatively new procedure, and it's called therapeutic hypothermia. We will lower her body temperature, and the thought is that the lowered body temperature will prevent the brain from the worst kind of injury that we can imagine. And it may work, it may partially work, but we don't think we have anything to lose. And so they brought me up to the intensive care unit, and I was in a coma, and they proceeded with that protocol. I don't remember leaving my body. The very first thing I remember is being in this black void. I say a void, but it wasn't void as in empty, because I felt alive. I just couldn't see any boundaries. There was no top or bottom or sides. I was just floating. And the thought occurred to me pretty quickly, I think I'm dead. This didn't scare me at all. This just did not frighten me. I thought, I am me. I am thinking my own thoughts. I was very much aware that I was myself, but what does a good nurse do when you want to check something out? You do an assessment. So I thought, okay, let me find out if I have a body. And I can remember, I laugh when I think about it now, by feeling like for my head, my arms, my legs. And then I was pretty satisfied. It was like, okay, no body, no head, no arms. I am definitely out of my body and I am dead. And that thought, which one would think would really put the fear of God in anybody, or just didn't. I was fascinated. How can I be me and be so alive, and super alive, by the way, like super alive, like my senses were so accentuated. I could see in back of me, around me. I could hear very, very deep harmonic vibrations that I also felt in my essence. So I felt like I was part of that. And I was seeing every filament of light and, every star and every orb in a way that, I never could in my human body. And there were colors that don't exist here. Everything was just so super real. And I felt completely limitless. I felt like I didn't have the confines of being, in my physical body. And I thought, well, what am I doing here? Like, okay, I'm dead. So what's going to happen next? And that began a series of experiences where I would think a thought, and as soon as I had the thought, something would happen. Either I was given the answer, or I was transported to a place where I saw the answer. And when I thought, okay, what's next? I felt myself begin to move. And as I came closer to what was a very small, it felt like an entryway. like I could see. It looked like, if you're watching a sunrise and you're in darkness and you start to see that light just creep up over the horizon. That's what it felt like. I also felt that sense of something is about to begin, just like when the sun is coming up, like the day is about to be born. I mean, that's kind of what it felt like. And I was propelled out of the darkness into a amazingly luminous web of light. I would say it looked like a spider web because it was just so intricately woven. It was fascinating. I just was, wow, what is this? It was just so beautiful. And I, at that time, became aware of a presence on my left side. It was clearly on my left side. And it kind of reminded me, if you've ever gone to a museum or an art exhibit and you kind of get those headphones and you get kind of that audio tour of, now you're looking at this painting or this sculpture, except that, so it was audio input, and I kind of almost like, okay, this is going to be my guide, but it was interactive. It wasn't just that I was hearing it as if I would in a museum, but there was somebody talking to me now. And I felt very comforted by that. Not that I was afraid, but I thought, well, this is somebody that's going to help me understand. This is my, my analytical mind, kind of just kicking in, like, I want to figure this out. Like, I'm dead. I know I'm dead. I'm out of my body. Like, where am I going? And this web was something that it's really ineffable. I cannot put it into words. It was so bright and so intelligent. That was the other thing that struck me immediately, that there were a lot of orbs of light that were composing this web, but they were alive and intelligent, and I was struck with the knowing that this was somehow a foundational energy that I had entered, and that it was so knowledgeable and wise that I was going to learn. I knew I was going to learn some things from being there. I just sensed that. And I started moving through the web. And at first, the experience was one of observing. I was observing this beautiful web and having the awareness that these orbs were souls, that they were all souls. And then I recognized some. I can't really tell you how I recognized them. I just knew two things. I knew I had been there before, and I knew that I knew these souls. I couldn't tell you their names, but there was a sense of familiarity, and I thought, I know this place. I really don't know how I know this place. And my spiritual guide at that point said, yeah, you do know this place. This is where you came from. This is your home. And I thought, my home? But it felt right. I mean, there was nothing about what I was being told that felt foreign. It felt like, okay, this is it. I am home. And I started moving through the web. And quickly, I became aware that I was seeing scenes from my life. Scenes from my life that I really remembered instantly, but that I really hadn't thought were significant, and some were tough to look at. And I remember thinking, okay, if this is a time for me to reach out to this guide for support, I'm going to do it now. And I just had that thought. And the message I received was, this is about learning. This is about re-experiencing what happened in your life, and not just from your own experience, but from the experience of the other. And that was told to me at the same time I was experiencing it. So it was kind of like a simultaneous experience. And, one that I'll share that was very difficult for me was I was a young nurse, and there was a place that we went to that was frequented by a lot of Hopkins professionals for dinner. We would go there sometimes, and they gave you large portions. And when I came out of the restaurant, the friend that I was with, one of my closest friends, another Hopkins nurse, we had, a lot of food. And I can remember thinking, I am going to bring this food home for my kids. At that point in my life, I was a single parent, and I was just so happy that I was going to be able to bring this doggy bag, these multiple, we had so much food. We came out of the restaurant, and I locked eyes immediately with a homeless man who was right outside of the restaurant. And I instantly knew what I was going to be shown, and I did not want to see it. Because I, who had always given food or money or even a bottle of water or whatever it was to homeless people. I had worked with the homeless populations in Baltimore, in free clinics, and, it was so unlike me not to give to this person, and I made the conscious decision not to do that because I wanted to bring that food home for my kids. And I remember the look in his eyes, and I could see them right now. It's difficult to even talk about it, and I felt it so deeply in that moment. And then I heard, think about and look at what he was experiencing. And then what I was shown was something I would have never known about this individual. And that was that he was hungry for sure. But he felt tremendous shame. And his thoughts were, which I could hear, were, well, of course you're not going to give me your food. Why would you? Look at you. You're coming out of this restaurant. You're dressed nicely, and here I am. Look at me. I'm smelly. I'm horrible. And why would you give me your food? And the shame that he felt at feeling that vulnerable and feeling in that, himself in that condition was worse than the physical hunger that he was feeling. And then I was shown that this man had been a very successful man at one point in his life. He had had a car accident, and he had become addicted to OxyContin. And through a series of events in that addiction, he had lost his business, he had lost his family, he had lost his marriage, and he had lost everything. And I would never have known that from looking at him on the outside. And in that moment, in that life review, I thought two things. Number one, don't show me anymore, because I was so ashamed of not responding to that. And then I remember the guide kind of helping me to see that, it didn't really matter, what he looked like on the outside. You would never have known this. And we're showing this to you because you never know what's going on inside. You never know what battle somebody has fought or what they're fighting. And I thought, I'm never going to forget this. I'm never, ever going to forget this. Just like I never forgot that man's eyes. I can see them right now. And there were other things. They weren't all bad. There were a lot of good things. I was shown that I was given the privilege of being a nurse and working as a therapist and being able to help people. And the things I was shown were not, the big interventions that I thought, oh, wow, Deb, that was really a crowning moment for you. I was shown little things that made huge differences for the individuals I was working with. Now I was veering from my own life to looking at, these orbs in the matrix. They were all souls. And I was watching what felt like a slideshow of events from their life. And some of them were good, but a lot of them were really hard to look at. And I was being shown the raw reality of what that was like for that person to experience that abuse, or to experience, to take their own life, or to have somebody in their family take their own life. I mean, it was so overwhelming. And I said to my guide, I'm having enough trouble handling my own stuff. What am I supposed to do with this? Just the caregiver. Like, I can't, what can I do? I mean, I remember asking the question, did these things happen? All of these, are they gonna happen? Can we do anything to stop them? I was kind of in that mode of, like feeling helpless, I guess is the best word I can think of. And at that moment, I became very aware that before I would form a question in my soul, in my essence, that it was answered. And that was when I was absolutely convinced I was in the presence of God, that I was known so deeply that I did not even have to ask the question. And the answer was very clear. The answer was, don't look at the events, look at the souls, look at the lights. And I directed my gaze to the lights. And the lights were unchanged. They were as bright and beautiful as they were ever. And I heard the words, you see, nothing can harm the soul, ever. The soul is immortal and intact. And these things are hard to look at, but the soul can never, ever be harmed. And I can't even put into words how deeply I felt that. I would say I felt it in every cell of my body if I had one. It was just such a deep knowing that, oh my gosh, this makes sense. I wish I knew this. I wish I knew this before, that nothing could harm the soul.